It started in the most unexpected way, with a child's cry echoing through the marble halls of a mansion feared by an entire city. Inside, the son of the most powerful mafia boss in New York lay pale and motionless. Dozens of doctors had come and gone, each leaving with the same defeated look. No one could explain what was happening to the boy. And the man everyone feared, Antonio Romano, the Don himself, stood helpless for the first time in his life. He had power, money, and influence. But none of it could buy his son's heartbeat back. For months, Antonio had flown in specialists from every corner of the world. Harvard doctors, Russian neurologists, German surgeons, each one confident at first, and silent after seeing the boy's condition. His son Luca was only 7. He had stopped speaking, eating, even responding. His pulse fluttered like a candle about to go out. The Don's mansion had turned into a hospital. White coats moved in and out, machines beeped day and night, but nothing changed. Antonio's wife, Isabella, cried behind locked doors. The once bustling home of power now echoed with despair. One evening, as Antonio sat in his study, surrounded by piles of medical reports, his longtime housekeeper, Gloria, knocked softly. She had worked for his family for more than 15 years, quiet, loyal, always unseen. But that night, her hands trembled. "Sir, my daughter just came home from university," she said hesitantly. "She's studying biomedical science. She's been working on a rare condition that sounds like what Luca might have." Antonio looked up sharply. "Your daughter?" he repeated, the disbelief heavy in his voice. "You think a cleaning lady's kid knows more than 100 doctors?" Gloria swallowed hard but didn't back down. "I know how it sounds, sir, but she's gifted. She's been helping at a small research center. Just let her take a look." Antonio almost dismissed her, but something about Gloria's eyes stopped him. She wasn't pleading, she was certain. And when you've lost everything, even pride begins to bend. "Fine," he said finally. "Bring her tomorrow. If she wastes my time, both of you are out." That night, Gloria drove home in tears, both from fear and fragile hope. Nea was only 22, a quiet, brilliant young black woman who had grown up watching her mother scrub other people's floors to pay for her textbooks. Maya listened as her mother explained everything. "Mama," Maya said softly, "I'll try. But you must promise not to be afraid of what I might find." The next morning, Maya walked into the Romano mansion wearing simple jeans, her curls tied back, and a folder of notes clutched to her chest. The guards stared, the doctors whispered, and Antonio Romano's cold eyes followed her every step. "Show me what you can do," he said. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't ask for help or introductions. She went straight to Luca's room. Inside, machines surrounded the small boy, but she ignored them and knelt beside him, checking his eyes, his pulse, and his breathing rhythm. Nice. She took notes quickly, her mind racing. Then she noticed something strange. Tiny muscle spasms in his fingers that didn't match the symptoms the doctors had described. Within minutes, Maya began asking for things, specific tests, a certain lamp, and an old notebook she carried everywhere. The senior doctor scoffed, but Antonio silenced them with one look. Hours later, Maya looked up. "I think I know what's wrong," she said quietly. Antonio stood. "You think, or you know?" "I know," she said. "And if I'm right, everyone's been treating the wrong illness." That was the first time in months someone spoke with certainty in that house. Maya explained that Luca's symptoms matched a rare neurological reaction caused by exposure to a certain experimental drug, something that might have been in one of his recent vaccinations. The more she talked, the more the senior doctors' faces drained of color. She was connecting dots they had never even considered. Antonio leaned forward. "Can you fix it?" Maya hesitated. "If we can stabilize his nervous system, yes, but it's risky. I'll need full control of his treatment. No interference." The room fell silent. A cleaning lady's daughter, barely older than a college student, was asking to overrule world-renowned doctors. Antonio took a slow breath. "Do it," he said finally. Maya nodded once, and that single nod would change all their lives forever. What happened in the next 72 hours would make headlines, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Maya didn't sleep for the next 3 days. She stayed by Luca's bedside, her small frame bent over charts, microscopes, and machines that seemed too large for her hands. The mansion that once echoed with power was now quiet, filled only with the soft hum of medical equipment and the rhythm of a young woman's determination. At first, the doctors resisted. They muttered that she was reckless, that she was playing with the Don's son's life. But when Antonio caught one of them trying to override her orders, he stepped forward, his voice low and sharp. "She's in charge now. You had your chance." And that was the end of the discussion. Maya began administering a treatment plan that combined advanced neurotherapy with a formula she'd been developing at her university. She didn't tell anyone that it was her final year research project, one that had been dismissed by her professors as too ambitious for her resources. She was about to prove them all wrong, but the stakes were now unimaginably high. Gloria watched from the corner of the room, her heart in her throat. Every time Maya injected a serum or adjusted Luca's monitors, her mother whispered silent prayers. Antonio, however, watched her like a hawk, not out of distrust, but out of desperate hope. For the first time, he saw courage that couldn't be bought. On the second night, Luca's pulse crashed. Machines screamed. The doctors panicked. Maya's hands didn't shake. She called for specific dosages, shouted out orders with a command that silenced everyone. "He's not dying," she said fiercely, her voice cutting through the chaos. "He's fighting." Antonio rushed to his son's side, gripping the boy's hand. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Whatever it takes." Maya's formula was experimental, something no hospital would approve without years of trials. But when you're standing between life and death, rules start to blur. She adjusted the serum and looked at Antonio. "If I'm wrong, he might not wake up again." Antonio met her eyes. "And if you're right?" She didn't blink. "Then you'll get your son back." The room went silent as she pushed the syringe. Minutes passed, then an hour. The monitors steadied, one by one. The boy's breathing deepened. His fingers twitched. Maya leaned closer, whispering softly, "Come on, Luca. Don't make me prove them right." And then a small sound, a weak, raspy voice. Papa. Antonio froze. Every muscle in his body locked. Slowly, he turned toward his son, whose eyes were now open, blinking against the light. The Mafia boss, feared by hundreds, fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face as he gripped his son's hand. "I'm here, Luca. I'm here." Everyone in the room stood still. Even the doctors who had once dismissed Maya were too stunned to speak. The impossible had happened. When Maya finally stepped back, her body trembling from exhaustion, Antonio stood and faced her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of his entire world, he whispered, "You just did what no one else could. You brought my son back from the dead." Maya smiled faintly. "Sir, you just needed someone to listen to his body instead of their egos." That line would later become famous, but that night, it was just the truth. By morning, news of Luca's recovery spread across the medical community. Porters camped outside the mansion, trying to figure out who the mysterious young woman was. Maya didn't stay to talk. She packed her things quietly and prepared to leave. Antonio found her at the front door. "You're not just leaving, are you?" "I've done my part," she said softly. "You don't owe me anything?" He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. You changed everything. My son, my family, me." She looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Antonio's gaze softened. "You healed more than my boy. You reminded me that power means nothing without humility, that sometimes the greatest genius comes from the most unexpected places." Then, for the first time in his life, the Don of New York bowed his head, not to a rival, not to a superior, but to the daughter of his cleaning lady. But this story wasn't over. Because what Maya didn't to know was that the doctors she had embarrassed, the ones whose reputations she had shattered, weren't done with her yet. They were about to make her life a living nightmare. It started quietly. A rejection letter from the hospital she'd applied to. Then another. Then another. Within weeks, every major medical institution in New York had blacklisted her. But the girl who had saved a mafia boss's son was suddenly untouchable. Maya tried to brush it off at first. She told herself it was fine. She'd find another city, another hospital. But when she overheard two former classmates whispering about her in the hallway of a small clinic, she realized what had happened. They say she forged her research. Yeah, and almost killed that kid. Just got lucky, that's all. Her throat tightened. The same people who once called her a genius were now tearing her apart. That night, as she walked home through the rain, her phone buzzed. It was her mother, Gloria. "Maya, you need to come home," she said, her voice shaking. "Something's wrong." When Maya reached their small apartment, Antonio was waiting there in person without his guards, standing beside Gloria with a grim expression. "Maya," he said, "you need to hear this." He handed her a manila envelope. Inside were copies of emails, false reports, and statements signed by senior doctors, all accusing her of malpractice and fraud. "Okay, her license had been flagged for suspension. They're trying to destroy you," Antonio said, "because you made them look small." Maya sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "I just wanted to save him. That's all I did." Antonio looked at her for a long moment. "You saved him. But you also exposed them. They built their careers on reputation, not truth. You broke that illusion." He turned to Gloria. "Your daughter doesn't deserve this. I won't let it stand." Gloria, always gentle, placed her hand on Antonio's arm. "Please don't do anything that'll hurt your son's peace." Antonio nodded slowly, but the fire in his eyes didn't fade. "I won't hurt anyone," he said, "but I'll make them remember her name." The next morning the story broke. Not on a gossip site, but on the front page of the New York Journal. Headline: Black student doctor saves Mafia heir. Medical elites tried to bury her career. The article detailed every step of her treatment, backed by Antonio's legal team and Luca's verified recovery reports. Within hours, the internet exploded. People called her the miracle student, the genius who defied the system. Hashtags spread. News anchors debated whether racism or jealousy played the bigger role in her blacklisting. By nightfall, medical boards began retracting their accusations. The same institutions that had rejected her now sent public apologies. But Maya didn't smile. She didn't post on social media. She just sat in silence, her mother beside her watching the chaos unfold. Then her phone rang. It was a hospital in Geneva. "Dr. Maya Williams," the voice said, "we'd like to invite you to join our neurology team. Your work is beyond extraordinary." Maya's lips trembled as she replied softly, "Thank you. But I have to finish something first." A week later, she stood in front of the ruined community clinic in her old neighborhood, the one that had been abandoned for years. Kids used to call it haunted. Maya looked at the cracked walls and smiled faintly. "This is where I'll start," she said. "Not for power, not for recognition, but so no one else like me has to beg for a chance." Months later, the Williams Health Center opened its doors, free for low-income families. Built with funds Antonio had secretly provided. On opening day, Antonio arrived quietly with Luca, now healthy and smiling. They watched as patients lined up, as Maya and Gloria welcomed them like family. "You built something better than revenge," Antonio said quietly. Maya looked at him, tears glinting in her eyes. "No, I just built something honest." As the sun set behind them, a golden glow filled the clinic. For the first time, Maya felt peace. Not because the world finally saw her worth, because she never let their hate define it. Her story wasn't about healing one boy anymore. It was about healing a broken system. And that, sometimes, is the most powerful cure of all. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let people know that brilliance can come from anywhere, and that compassion always wins over pride. Subscribe for more powerful stories of justice, courage, and redemption.